morning. You're listening to The Brief Wake Up, your mindful start to the day. I am Handel, your daily coffee companion, helping you wake up informed, thoughtful, and maybe just a little amused before the day gets old. If you're commuting, corralling kids, or just standing in line for caffeine, you're in the right place. Let's get you caught up. For health today, let's talk about rethinking obesity and why the scale may be lying. Yesterday, during our lighter roast, we joked about weight gain in marriage, how comfort, routine, and shared meals can quietly add inches even when the scale doesn't seem alarming. Today's health news puts a much sharper clinical edge on that idea. A new study published in JAMA Network Open suggests that as many as 75% of U.S. adults may meet criteria for obesity under a new definition. This is nearly double the current estimate of about 40% when obesity is defined by BMI alone. For decades, clinicians have relied on body mass index, or BMI, a simple ratio of height to weight. It's easy, inexpensive, and familiar. But BMI has a major blind spot. It doesn't tell us where fat is stored. Researchers from Harvard, Yale, and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center applied a newer framework proposed by the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology Commission, which incorporates waist circumference and body fat distribution into the definition of obesity. The result was striking. Nearly 4 in 10 adults with a normal BMI were found to have excess metabolically dangerous fat once waist measurements were included. This matters because visceral fat packed around internal organs, behaves very differently from fat under the skin. It fuels inflammation, insulin resistance, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease. You can look fine, weigh the same as you did 10 years ago, and still be at substantially higher cardiometabolic risk. In fact, we've discussed this before on the health segment. Waist circumference is often a stronger predictor of cardiometabolic disease than BMI, precisely because it reflects this hidden visceral fat burden. Now here's where the story becomes more nuanced and more hopeful. At the same time that we're redefining obesity more accurately, national BMI averages in the US have begun to decline modestly for the first time in decades. A major driver of that shift appears to be the rapid uptake of GLP-1-based weight loss medications. These drugs don't just lower weight, they preferentially reduce visceral fat, improve insulin sensitivity, and a lower cardiovascular risk. In other words, they target the exact kind of fat this new definition is designed to identify. So we're at an inflection point. On one hand, better measurements reveal that obesity, particularly hidden, dangerous obesity, is far more widespread than we previously acknowledged. On the other, modern treatments are finally moving population-level metrics in the right direction. The takeaway: BMI alone is no longer sufficient. Waist size matters. Fat location matters. And the early decline we're seeing in US BMI trends suggests that when we measure obesity correctly and treat it seriously, progress is possible. And yes, that includes what happens after marriage. The news is next. Just as peace talks between Russia and Ukraine appeared to gain momentum, a disputed allegation from Vladimir Putin has once again put the entire process on unstable ground. Tensions between Russia and Ukraine escalated sharply Monday, injecting new uncertainty into US-led peace talks, just as negotiations appeared to be gaining momentum. Russian President Vladimir Putin accused Ukraine of attempting a drone attack on one of his personal residences. This claim Ukrainian leaders categorically denied, calling it fabricated and designed to justify renewed Russian strikes. Moscow has not provided evidence for the allegation. The accusation comes at a delicate moment. Just one day earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with U.S. President Donald Trump in Florida as part of an intensified diplomatic push to end the war. Speaking to reporters, Trump acknowledged Putin's anger over the alleged incident, but urged restraint, calling this a delicate period of time and not the right time for escalation. Trump also confirmed he had previously denied Ukraine's request for long-range Tomahawk missiles, signaling continued limits on U.S. military support, despite ongoing negotiations. Zelensky responded forcefully, saying Russia had invented the story as a pretext for further attacks on Kiev and to avoid taking concrete steps toward peace. Ukrainian officials warned citizens to prepare for possible large-scale strikes, as Russian leaders hinted at retaliation. Despite the turbulence, both Washington and Moscow say talks are continuing. The current draft peace framework, a 20-point plan developed by U.S. and Ukrainian negotiators, includes strong Western security guarantees for Ukraine, though their exact scope and duration remain unresolved. Zelensky has pushed for guarantees lasting decades, arguing shorter commitments risk allowing Russia to regroup and attack again. Several major issues remain sticking points. Control of the Russian-occupied Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, territorial disputes in eastern Ukraine's Donbas region, the structure and enforcement of any demilitarized zone, and whether Ukraine can safely hold elections under martial law. Russia continues to insist Ukraine withdraw from parts of eastern territory it still controls, a condition Kyiv rejects unless matched by a full Russian withdrawal. Meanwhile, Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have left roughly 1 million households without power in Kyiv in recent days, reinforcing Ukrainian concerns that Moscow's actions contradict its stated desire for peace. After optimism over renewed diplomacy, this latest accusation underscores how fragile the peace process truly is. With trust thin, military pressure ongoing, and key issues unresolved, negotiations risk becoming less about resolution and more about leverage. When war continues in real time while peace is discussed on paper, the danger isn't just that talks may fail, it's that the illusion of progress enables escalation under the cover of diplomacy, actively reshaping the battlefield. Tech and culture is next. This morning in Tech and Culture, let's lighten the mood and talk about something we almost never think about, but see every single day. Not our screens, not our apps, the letters themselves. Every email, every report, every PowerPoint you've ever opened in the last 15 years was dressed in the same outfit: Calibri. It was Microsoft's quiet default since 2007. Soft, round, and inoffensive. The Switzerland of fonts. It didn't shout nor stand out, it just worked. But this year, Microsoft quietly retired it, replacing Calibri with a new typeface called Aptos. Aptos looks crisper, more geometric, and more confident. It's built to read well on screens at small sizes and across every device, from your phone to your 4K monitor. And while that sounds like a design decision, it's something bigger. It's a cultural one. You see, every font tells a story about the era that made it. Times New Roman came from the print age, newspapers, books, and bureaucracy. It said authority. Arial rose with the computer age. It was clean, utilitarian, and efficient. Calibri captured the early digital years, friendly, rounded, and optimistic. And now, Aptos speaks the language of a hybrid world: remote work, digital screens, fast communication. Fonts shape how we feel about what we're reading before we even process the words. A serif font like Times New Roman makes us trust the content more. A sans serif like Aptos feels fresh and modern. It's why brands obsess over typography, because the font is part of the message. So when Microsoft changes the world's default typeface, it's not just a new look, it's a subtle retuning of tone. It says, we've moved on. From print to pixels, from static to mobile, from formal to fluid, the font that once defined the office is gone, replaced by one that defines the digital workspace. And in that quiet switch, you can see the story of how our culture keeps rewriting itself, one letter at a time. So next time you open a blank Word document and start typing, remember, even your font has a point of view. The lighter roast is next. Yesterday we talked about BMI creeping up after marriage, how routines settle, schedules sync, and the scale can drift without anyone really noticing. Today I want to take that conversation one step further and a little closer to the edge. Because whether we're talking about marriage or dating, there's a question people rarely ask out loud. What does obesity do to attraction? Now, quick disclaimer before we go any further. This is about biology and perception, not blame, not worth, and not moral judgment. In dating, no one asks for your BMI. No one checks your labs. No one measures your waist. People respond to what they can see. And pretending that obesity has no impact on attraction doesn't make us kinder. It just makes the conversation incomplete. Attraction isn't a referendum on character. It's a biological and perceptual response. Obesity, particularly central obesity, changes the signals people subconsciously perceive. Movement, posture, energy, physical ease. That doesn't mean people with obesity can't be attractive. They are constantly. But it does mean that body composition influences perception, whether we want it to or not. Here's the part we usually miss. What people tend to react to isn't weight alone, it's health cues. Vitality, mobility, ease of movement. That's why two people with similar levels of obesity can be perceived very differently, and why some people carry more weight and still read as confident, healthy, and attractive. We've talked before about visceral fat, the kind that raises cardiometabolic risk. It's also, not coincidentally, the kind that shows up first in the midsection. And yes, this is where marriage comes back into the picture. Because post-marriage weight gain isn't usually dramatic. It's subtle, gradual, comfort-based. 10 pounds here, a looser waistband there. No one gains weight because they said, I do. They gain it because the refrigerator gets more inviting and the dating app anxiety disappears. But when those small changes accumulate into central obesity, the body starts sending different signals, both metabolically and perceptually. Acknowledging that doesn't mean blaming people. It doesn't mean reducing attraction to appearance. It means recognizing that health and attraction share more overlap than we're comfortable admitting. Ignoring that overlap doesn't protect anyone. It just keeps the conversation stuck. And if we're serious about health or honesty, we have to be willing to talk about what's actually happening, without shame and without denial. Our commemoration is next. Today gives us an interesting mix of discipline, indulgence, reinvention, and last-minute clarity, which feels about right for the final days of the year. On this day in 1865, Rudyard Kipling, the author of The Jungle Book, was born. Kipling wrote about responsibility, restraint, and inner steadiness, most famously in If, a poem that reminds us that maturity isn't about perfection, but composure when things go sideways. It's a fitting message as we stand on the edge of a new year, carrying lessons we didn't plan to learn. Today is also the birthday of Tiger Woods, born in 1975, a reminder of what relentless focus and discipline can produce, and also of how even extraordinary talent doesn't exempt anyone from being human. Excellence and vulnerability often travel together. Then there's National Bacon Day, which quietly reminds us that enjoyment and excess have always been part of the human equation. especially right before January resolutions kick in. It's a small acknowledgement that balance isn't built by pretending indulgence doesn't exist, but by deciding how it fits. And finally, today is the unofficial festival of enormous changes at the last minute, a holiday that recognizes sudden realizations, late pivots, and decisions made just before the clock runs out. Because sometimes clarity doesn't arrive neatly on schedule. Taken together, today's commemorations tell a simple truth. Life is a mix of discipline and indulgence, ambition and humility, long planning, and last-minute insight. And growth usually happens somewhere in between. Today's show reminded us that the numbers we rely on, whether BMI, ceasefire frameworks, or default fonts, often hide more than they reveal. From rethinking obesity and attraction, to fragile peace talks in Ukraine, to the quiet cultural shift embedded in something as simple as a new font. The common thread was this: context matters more than surface metrics. As we head into the final days of the year, clarity doesn't come from pretending things are simple. It comes from being willing to look a little closer. This is Handel for the brief wake-up. Stay calm, curious, and kind. I will catch up with you tomorrow.